And we are now live. There we go. So, on December 19th, 2000, the then President of the Republic of Mali, His Excellency Alpha Oumar Konaré, established the mission for the African Academy of Languages, Acalan, by presidential decree. The mission became the African Academy of Languages, Acalan, in January 2006, when its statutes were adopted by the African Union as a specialized institution of the African Union. Now, Acalan is entrusted with the task of developing and promoting African languages so that they can be used in all domains of society, in partnership with the languages inherited from colonization, being English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. But is this mission rather fantastical? The idea of establishing continental working languages across 55 states of enormous diversity, given our varied and tumultuous colonial histories, is surely a daunting one. And yet it's one which is also crucial for the cultural, moral, economic, and technological development of the continent. I'm joined by the man charged with turning the dreams of Acalan into reality, working with colleagues. I have with me Dr. Lang Fafa Dampha, the Executive Secretary of Acalan. So thanks so much for joining us to address this matter of great importance. May I call you Fafa?
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be with you on this platform. You could call me Fafa. That's my father's name, and it fits him well.
Fantastic. So, Fafa, where are you normally based in your role as Executive Secretary?
As you've just said, thank you very much for inviting me on this platform again. I'm pleased to be with you. Now, as you've just said, the African Academy of Languages is the African Union's specialized institution.
Right.
Our mandate, you've just said it, is to develop and promote African languages. We are based in Bamako, Mali. Mali is in West Africa. This is what we are.
Well, that's terrific. So, I mean, do you do a lot of traveling around the continent, to Europe, other places?
Yes. I mean, as you know, we are dealing with Africa. We're dealing with the African Union. And we have 55 member states of the African Union. In all 55 member states of the African Union, we are operating, and we travel to these member states to work with the respective ministries in charge of languages and the government. So we do extensive traveling.
Okay. So, I mean, the first question I have to ask is, why is it important to have a continental language or languages for Africa?
A continental language is essential for Africa. We think that Africans should have their own common language. If you look at the linguistic history of this world, you would see all people, they speak their languages, they use their languages in their own development. It is only Africa, and precisely Africa south of the Sahara, that is using other people's cultures and languages for their own development to the detriment of to their own detriment, to the detriment of their languages and cultures. Therefore, the African Union has decided to promote an African language amongst the official languages that it is using today. And a continental language has advantages. A continental language, yes.
Go ahead.
I mean, in showing the urgency and the necessity of the idea of a language amongst the numerous indigenous languages or indigenous African languages, and elevating it to the level of a common Pan-African language of wider communication. This is what the term we use, a language of wider communication in Africa, and ultimately as Africa's lingua franca. We have noted that there is a need for common expression for peace, security, and economic integration of Africa, and a need for common language, a common language or common languages in summits, negotiations, mediations, and discussions. Now, this accordingly would allow Africans to communicate their ideas, aspirations, and needs in their own languages or in their own language, and to attain a Pan-African identity outside the level Anglophone, Francophone, and Lusophone. I think it's time to shed off the old colonial skin.
Okay. Now, I mean, somebody might say that, look, I mean, I'm from Ghana, for example. The Brits have been there since 500 years. And in that time, all the education has been done in the English language. Somebody might say, well, look, we need to build hospitals. You know, we need to build roads. We need to set up railway systems. Costs money. Why don't we spend money on that and make do with the languages which we have been functioning in over this time? This question has to be addressed to somebody.
I think that is an interesting point when you talk about economics, development in economic terms. But if we consider the economic factors that are responsible for building or functioning, making these hospitals and all these other factors, functional, it's based on our languages, education, getting knowledge, getting the education is based on a language. And the problem in Africa today is that children go to school to learn in English and French and Portuguese and Spanish without having even a notion of these languages. We go to primary school and the teacher starts teaching us mathematics and all this economic and all these subjects in English or French or Portuguese, but the students are there. The children are there, the pupils are there. The pupils are there, they don't know what the teacher is talking about. But if you speak an African language to an African child, you are educating this child more effectively. And I just wanted to say that language is not education if it is not a subject. Language is a means of attaining education. To educate Africans more effectively, we need to do it in their languages, in the languages of the people.
Okay, I think that argument's one. What about the difficulty of the fact that we got 55 countries in the Union? We were colonized by lots of different people. So the lingua franca, the official lingua franca, in all these countries are different. How are we going to work together with these and our native African languages? Is that a challenge that you are confronting, and how are you confronting it?
We have a lot of problems with these official languages. Even in our development activities, you have a part of Africa speaking French, another part speaking English, you have another part speaking Portuguese, and very few countries, about 2, speaking Spanish. Now, when we go to meetings, we speak these languages at different levels. We have to engage in translation and so on. Now, I mean, an average African, because of the effects of colonialism, speaks at least 2 languages now. Now, instead of using English and French and Portuguese and Spanish, we can develop a common language or common languages on regional basis and try to work on these languages. For example, Kiswahili, that Acalan is promoting now as a language of wider communication in Africa, could be used by all Africa. Or Arabic also, which is an African language. Now, the problem with these languages is that we don't understand these languages. And we have problems in these languages because these languages are not linked to our own languages. But Kiswahili, which is an African language, for example, a Bantu language with terms from Arabic and other Bantu languages, could be easily learned and understood more easily by Africans than English and French and Portuguese. So when we go to meetings, you have this not antagonism, but a kind of difference.
Right.
The Anglophone people with the Francophone people and the Lusophone people, which is creating a lot of problems in our meetings, in our development endeavors.
Okay, Fafa, I'm going to come back to this in a minute. But before we do that, I want to paint the listeners a picture of what your organization structure looks like. What is the framework for Acalan? I mean, you're part of the Health, Human Affairs and Social Development wing of the AU, aren't you? Can you just paint me a quick picture of where you sit within the AU structure?
Thanks very much. The African Union has different departments, and Acalan, as a specialized institution of the African Union dealing with language matters, is precisely under the Department of Health, Humanitarian Affairs, and Social Development, which is the biggest department at the African Union dealing with social matters, health, etc. We are precisely under the Culture Division of this department of the African Union.
I see. So you're also connected to the Research and Information Center on Migration, aren't you?
Yeah, the research, the African Union, our department, the Department of Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, has just inaugurated the Research Center on Migration for the African Union in Bamako, Mali, which is also a specialized office of the African Union dealing with research and education teaching on migration. We are both under the Department of Health and Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, but our works are not directly linked.
Connected. Got it. Okay. Now I'm going to go to my next question, really, Papa, which is, I think, where the meat of this conversation lies. It's about the technicalities and the linguistics issues. You let me speak as an ordinary person. I work with computers and laptops and digital technology and so on and so forth. I speak 3 of my native languages fluently, very well. I'm not sure whether we have a vocabulary for gigabyte or RAM or SEO or any of those things. What are we going to do to make sure that the language, which was evolved in a different time and then held in stasis while we learned foreign languages, which were allowed to flourish with the times, how do we catch up our languages so that they talk about the things we do every day, today?
I think this is the main aspect of our work today.
Okay.
Now, if you consider English and French, these languages are empowered. This language consists of terms. These languages can interpret science and technology. And for African languages to be used as official languages, languages of instruction in the media, etc., we have to empower our languages. We have to give economic value to these languages. The African people must use these languages as a factor of their own development. This is why Acalan has come up with different projects. And part of this project, we have terminology and lexicography. This terminology and lexicography project is to train dictionary compilers and terminology developers and provide research, support, counsel services in all these fields. Because if we don't have terminology, we can't teach physics or chemistry or economics in our languages.
All we can do is look after births, funerals, and weddings, for which our lexicography is second bar none.
Exactly. So we need terms and dictionaries and grammar and corpus for our languages to empower them, to give them this economic value. Acalan has different projects. We have African languages and the cyberspace. Today, if you want, whatever you want to develop today, you must think of the computer. Therefore, we try to develop African languages, to promote African languages in the cyberspace and apply human language technologies to them. We try to develop keyboards, and we try to use African languages on the web platforms. Acalan is developing a comprehensive and interactive platform for African languages, which is going to be the main center where you will have all aspects of African languages on the cyberspace, on the computer. We try to develop correctors and so on, and etc. We have other other programs. The Pan-African Center for Interpretation and Translation, for example. Now, if you consider conferences, meetings, development activities in Africa, when you go to meetings in Africa, translation is done between English and French or between French and Portuguese, etc. But we have embarked on a training program for the African people to train them to train African people, young Africans, in the profession of translation and interpretation, so as to enable African languages to become working languages, effective working languages, and languages of instruction in a multilingual setup.
Okay.
Because what we want to do precisely here is that we want to train people to be in the profession of translation between Kiswahili and Lingala, between Wolof and Mandingo, between Ewe and Akan, etc. Not between English and French, because almost all training centers in this field are doing that. We can do training between English and African languages, or between African languages and other languages, that are not considered as African languages. But we firstly want to train people to do, to train them for, this thing amongst African languages first.
Okay, Fafa, let me just briefly segue from this. As you speak, you're painting pictures in my head. Right now, we have a situation in which if a man like you, who is incredibly articulate in French, you've got your PhD over there, or a person like me, who spent a lot of the early part of my life here in Europe, and for which reason I'm quite fluent in English, well, I might sound more intelligent and more competent purely because of my facility with the language. But in fact, there may be somebody from my country who has less of a facility with language who might leave me for dead when it comes to native intelligence. So what has this reliance on foreign languages cost Africa in terms of her development? Do you follow me?
Yeah, this is a very important aspect of African development, in the sense that what Acalan is trying to do is to have Africans educated in their first languages. Now, somebody who speaks like me, or somebody like me or you, who speaks relatively fluently in English, can express him or herself more effectively in this language in terms of knowledge. And an African who has not gotten access to these languages has difficulties in expressing, himself in terms of knowledge in his native language. This is one of the effects of educating Africans in English and French and Portuguese and Spanish, in foreign languages. An African who has not extensively gotten access to this knowledge, for example, and but has the capacity to relate to knowledge, is limited in its expertise to try to express himself or herself. So this is one of the major factors of educating Africans, because educating Africans in foreign languages that they don't understand create problems in terms of knowledge delivery.
Okay. I have to ask now, you started talking earlier on about these, what you called vehicular, let me get the expression right, vehicular cross-border languages. I call them vector languages. What are they? And why are they important in the work that you do?
Now, the vehicular cross-border languages, as the name indicates, a vehicular language is a language that is spoken by people of a country whose native language is different. For example, I take Bambara in Mali. Bambara is a vehicular language because almost everybody speaks this language. The Soninke speak this language. The Fulfulde speak this language. Now, speaking a language that is not your native language makes that language vehicular to you. That means that language,
it travels.
Yeah, you find it everywhere. Now, a cross-border language, as the name indicates, is a language that is spoken across borders, at least in 2 different countries. So these languages are considered by the African Union as languages of development, as languages of solidarity, as languages of commerce, as languages of trade, and as languages of unity, etc.
Can I ask, I mean, in Ghana, there's one example in Ghana, Ewe is spoken in Ghana and Togo.
Yes.
Up in the north, Hausa is spoken in the northern part of Ghana and up into Burkina.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you give me other languages of these vehicular languages? Other examples across the continent?
Hausa is a cross-border language because it is spoken in Nigeria, in Niger, it's spoken in Burkina Faso, and in Ghana, etc. Let me give an example of Fulfulde. Fulfulde is spoken in almost 18 countries in Africa. It goes up to Cameroon in Central Africa. Now, if we take an example of Fulfulde, Fulfulde is a factor of integration because if you are in Mali, you can express yourself in Fulfulde and communicate with the people. If you go to Gambia, the same. If you go to Senegal, the same. Burkina Faso, even in Ethiopia. So the African Union considers these languages as factors of development and integration and trade and commerce, etc. This is why Acalan is trying to develop these languages as a factor of its work.
Okay. So, what about the other technicality, regularizing things like grammar, notarization, how things are written, how they're spelt, and so on? Because, for example, in France, if you speak French, you go to Switzerland, the Swiss French can read everything that the French talk about. If you go to Switzerland, the Swiss Germans can understand pretty much everything that the Germans talk about. Also in Switzerland, the people in the southern part, many of them speak and understand what the Italians speak. So to do this, you require a kind of centralization and standardization of grammars and so on. Is this the sort of work Acalan does?
We're very much,
or aren't we there yet?
Yeah, we are doing. We are trying to work on that aspect of our language development. We're conscious about the differences these languages create in our different regions. Language is just a language. If I take an example of even small, relatively small countries like Gambia, the Mandingo there, the population of the Gambia is about 2.5 million now. But the Mandingo there in the Gambia, if you are in one region, some terms are different. When you speak Mandingo in the Gambia, somebody who knows the country would say you are from this region. And now what Acalan is conscious of is to try to harmonize the writing systems of African languages. And harmonizing the writing systems, we try not to get into harmonizing the language, because you don't harmonize a language. You harmonize the writing system. That means you recognize all the aspects of the language. It's just like English. What is saying in Britain might be different from what you're saying in America. But people would know that this is American English. It means this in England, for example, in Britain. So this is what we do. We establish language commissions, and these language commissions, we call them vehicular cross-border language commissions, because we are dealing with vehicular cross-border languages now, to try to develop them as factors of African integration. And these vehicular cross-border language commissions main responsibility is to empower, to develop their languages, their respective languages. And all the vehicular cross-border language commissions have identified harmonization and standardization of the writing systems of African languages as their priority domains.
Okay. There's so much we can talk about, Fafa, but I'm going to cut to the final section of this thing and talk about engagement with the public. You're a linguist, you're an academic, and you are dealing with something that can hugely affect the development of an entire continent. How do you get buy-in at the grassroots level? How do you get people engaged with the work that you're doing? I mean, you must be doing stuff on a continental basis. You must be doing stuff on a regional basis. You must also be doing stuff on a national basis. Can we spend the last few minutes of our conversation discussing how we can improve or deal with the matter of how we can get people to buy in and support your work?
The structure, the way Acalan is structured, we try to engage all Africa, because we are dealing with African languages. We are dealing with the languages of the people. To develop these languages, to empower these languages, we need the participation of the speakers of these languages. Now, we have two working structures. We have a sub-regional working structure that we call Vehicular Cross-Border Language Commissions. And we have a national language structure. That's a national structure which is based in each member state of the African Union. Now, this sub-regional Vehicular Cross-Border Language Commission is constituted in a way that all components of the African society participate in it.
Good.
We have linguists, we have archaeologists, we have economists, we have computer scientists, we have people from the civil society. All of them are speakers of the language.
Right.
Our objective is to bring all these people together, because we are going to develop terminology. We are going to harmonize the writing systems. We are going to promote African languages in the cyberspace. We are going to do a lot of things, and their responsibility is to develop these languages. And we try to engage men and women, all aspects of the society. The strategy in that is to embrace everyone, because it is a collective responsibility for all Africa to participate in it. We don't want strictly the top-down strategy. We also apply the bottom-up for everybody to participate. The second structure is that the national structure. We ask the ministry in each member state dealing with language matters. Normally, languages are linked to culture, but in some countries you can find, it is the Ministry of Education that is dealing with language matters. In that case, we asked the respective ministry to identify a national structure dealing with languages of that country to be the entry point of Acalan in that country. The strategy here is to engage the policymakers, because we might have the popular participation of the people of a country, but if the policymakers don't buy in what we're doing, that we can't get. But at the end, we have to go to the policy aspect of it, language policy. It is the government that is dealing with that. So we try to be as comprehensive as possible.
Sounds pretty good.
Good. I mean, that's. I'm getting some very interesting questions coming into my studio here over here. But Fafa, how can people who are listening to you now participate with you and support Acalan? People who have an interest in languages. I know that, if I may share this with you, most of us who had children abroad, Africans with made in England or made in Britain children, I would say 90% of them don't speak any African languages. And as time goes by, people recognize that it's time for us to go back and reclaim some of that, because it's only the Africans who have this problem. It's not the Asians. I'm sure that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who is Asian, is fluent in the languages of both his mother and his father, if they're different. So this is an ongoing challenge. How can we support your work to promote it?
I think this is a very important aspect of our work. Now, it's very unfortunate and it's very sad. Africans south of the Sahara are the ones affected by this syndrome, their own one.
Yeah.
If you go to Paris or England, I was in the Gambia and attending a wedding, and a family, a Mandingo family, came from England. And this gentleman was speaking English to his children. Yes, I called him, I said, but you are a Mandingo? He said, yes. I said, but I'm surprised that you're speaking English to your children in the Gambia, in a community of Mandingos. He said, well, just like that. So what we need to do, we have a lot of work in this domain. And it's
we have, sorry, I missed that. Can you say that again? We have
a lot of work.
Got it.
We have a lot of work to do in this domain. The African Union considers the diaspora as its sixth region. The African Union is divided into 5 main economic communities: the East African Community, ECOWAS Economic Community of West African States, the Central African Community, SADC, Southern African Development, Community, and the Arab Maghreb Zone. So the diaspora is the 6th region. And the African Union has even created institutions like CEDAW, which is Citizens in a Diaspora Organization, something like that, to deal with the diaspora. And Acalan, all institutions of the African Union are encouraged to deal with the diaspora, the African descent in outside Africa. This is why Acalan is now coming to the diaspora to try to develop, to try to engage Africans in the diaspora, to embrace their languages, their cultures, because no people can develop, wherever you may find yourself, you can never develop effectively, sustainably, entirely depending on other people's cultures and languages. So what we are doing, we try to create some aspects of our work in the diaspora and to try to encourage the African people, African descent, to be speaking their languages, and we will try to teach these languages to the people.
Okay. I'm going to close off in a second, but there are a couple of people who are online watching us speaking, and there's a gentleman who's asking, are you getting cooperation from the national government?
We are getting cooperation from the national government, of course, but Acalan is operating in all the 55 member states of the African Union.
Got it.
And each member state
must take responsibility for itself.
We normally have a national structure within the culture ministry or the education ministry, depending on which of these ministries is taking care of language matters.
Got it.
Yeah, but I mean, most policy decisions are there, but their implementation is what is problematic.
Sure.
And we are facing enormous difficulties in engaging African member states, governments of individual member states. I'll give you an example. The Language Plan of Action for Africa was developed in 1984 by an institution that you may consider as the grandfather of Acalan or grandmother of Acalan. And now, 1984 to 2006, this Language Plan of Action for Africa has been there. It has not been implemented. It was transformed in 2006 to try to encourage Africans to embrace it more effectively.
Yes.
Up to now, it is not implemented. And Acalan is trying to revise this Language Plan of Action for Africa, which states that all Africa, each member state should develop a language policy to situate the role of African languages in national development. Each member state should empower these languages to use them in the education system, to use them as official languages, to use them in the media, etc. Each member state should mobilize resources for a kind of fund for developing African languages. It has not been done. I will give you a second example. We write to member states, each ministry dealing with language matters, to ask them to identify, to nominate, to designate a national structure that will work with Acalan. Out of the 55 member states, Since 2006, Acalan has only 33 national structures. Most ministries, we send them our request, they take a long time to reply. We are, of course, being encouraged by our heads of state and the member state, of course, because the political will is there. But at the implementation stage, there are some problems that we need
some issues there.
More advocacy in individual member states to get this thing done.
Okay. Look, Fafa, I know you're busy. I have to let you go now. Thank you so much for spending, well, the last 50 minutes with us, really. And we must do this again, at which time I'd like to look at specific programs, action plans that you're working on. And certainly, I think it's important, purely as a communications person, that we need to get more buy-in from people at the grassroots to see the benefits of this so they can ask their governments to make the moves that they need to make. Can I, if I may say, there's nothing I find more fascinating than watching Africans broadcasting in their native languages. The vim, the energy, the wit that they demonstrate cannot be compared to what they do in English. And that just shows that on a continental level, if we don't beef up our languages, that alone means that we're operating at maybe 60% of our potential. And we need every single percentage point because we have a long way to go. Sir, thank you so much. And congratulations, and we wish you every success. What you're doing is crucial for the continent.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be with you on this platform. I'm really grateful because this is an important aspect of our work. Communication is very important, and the visibility, and this is an African issue, and it is for all Africa, whether you are on the continent or in the diaspora. And I wanted to say that Acalan has embarked on a radio station, online radio, whereby, in which broadcasting will be done in African languages. So we'll start that very soon, and I'm really grateful for, inviting me. On
what's your Twitter handle? Where can we follow you?
Yeah, I would send you our Twitter link. We have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, and we have LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I would share this with you.
Superb. Dr. Lang, Fafa Dampha, thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.
It's a pleasure for me. It's a pleasure for me. Thank you.
Okay.